Welcome to Used Car News Podcast. Used Car News is your top source for fast and reliable news that car dealers can rely on for this evolving industry. Here are this month's top stories. Incoming president-elect visits auctions, looks ahead. Auto dealers maintain steady outlook amid uncertainty. Independent auction turns around digital sales. And now here's your host, Jeffrey Belant.
Hey, welcome everyone to the Used Car News Podcast. This is Jeff Belant, managing editor and host of Used Car News Podcast. We're going to do something a little different this time. I just returned from me and my publisher of Used Car News, Colleen Fitzgerald, just returned late last week from Kansas City, where they held the National Auto Auction Association World Remarketing Convention, and it was very fun. Lots of good stuff going on. So we're going to use this podcast to give you a little taste of what went on there at the convention there in KC. Opened up, we had, of course, we got there on Tuesday, and we had a nice reception Tuesday night. There's one thing when you're in Kansas City, the land of barbecue, lots of meat all week long, which is great. If you like the beef, that was the place to be. For us, for my schedule, Wednesday morning kicked off with some of the sessions. And I got to say off the bat that NAAA is usually a kind of a behind-the-scenes stuff. A lot of the auctions and consigners kind of meeting in their own little private things. And there's not usually a ton of education or panels, at least in my memory there hasn't been. But this year was really good. It was kind of jam-packed with a lot of good panels, a lot of good workshops. And so I really got to say kudos to NAAA for that. And for me, it opened up with the session I first intended was hot topics in state houses regarding e-titles. You had folks like E-Blocks. Tanya Price was there. She has been a speaker at the Auction Academy in the past. Had one of the leaders from the Automobile Motor Vehicle Administrators Organization. And they kind of talked a little bit about the challenges, both of titles in general, but also in this era of e-titles and digital titles, how it has to be, what the challenges are, because we all want to go to digital. It makes more sense. Some states haven't. And then you have that challenge of buying an auction in one state while you're from another state and shipping it to a third state. So they really went through a lot of the nuts and bolts of the challenges of e-titles in this day and age. But it was pretty good. And you had a lot of good input from different folks. After that, we went right into the luncheon. And this is where they give the big awards. And this is always fun. I always like awards because you have these folks who've been in the industry serving and doing so much good stuff. And here's their time to be acknowledged. So the first one, we had the Industry Pioneer Award, and these are really good. These are folks who've just contributed so much to remarketing, so much for the auto auction industry, and really it's great to have them recognized. Bob McConkey from McConkey Auction Group, he introduced a couple of the winners of the Pioneer Award. One was Mike Bro. Mike Bro, if you guys remember going way back to the GE days, he worked at GE, with the GE auctions. They later bought by Manheim. He stayed a couple of decades in Manheim and then later went to Auto IMS. So that was really great to see Mike Bro honored and see him there at the show. The other industry auctioneer won't surprise you except in one way, and that is Henry Stanley. The legendary Henry Stanley, when he got announced, Colleen and I kind of looked at each other and were shocked that he hadn't already been the industry pioneer in the past. But he had won a bunch of awards over his 55 decades in the industry. Henry, as we know, had started an auction in Ohio. He actually started as an auctioneer in Ohio, later bought Ohio Auto Auction. Later, he and his wife, Patty, actually retired to Florida for a year, came back. They got what became the Carolina Auto Auction and it really had a fantastic career. He went on, he served as NAAA president, and then a few years later, his wife both were inducted to the NAAA Hall of Fame. So they did have a lot of awards, but it was kind of surprising that he hadn't already received the Industry Pioneer Award. But that was really a wonderful award for him. And while he was not able to attend, his son, Eric Autenreith, former NAAA president as well, accepted his award. And it was really heartfelt, and everybody there at the luncheon was really pleased with that. Then the other big award was someone near and dear to the Used Car News heart, and that was Pierre Pons, won the 2025 NAAA Hall of Fame Award. And if you know Pierre, he's been around for a while. Obviously, he's with PPC Management, but he also had been CEO of ServNet. he started the Auction Academy. We'll talk about that in a bit. But it was really great to see Pierre honored. And Pierre, full disclosure, I'm a pretty loquacious guy myself. And Pierre had a great speech, and he did go on a bit, but that's okay because I appreciate it. And I think when people win these awards, it's nice that they give a chance. He thanked a lot of people. He gave a lot of shout outs. And, Pierre's a great storyteller. And so he talked a little bit about the people he's met in the industry and people who have helped him. And it was honestly, it was a great award. It was really enjoyable to hear him and talk about folks. He even had Nick Peluso there. I hadn't seen Nick Peluso in a while. If you know your industry, he was one of the longtime guys there. But it was great to see Pierre win. And I got to tell you, it's funny. They were ribbiting him a little bit about the length of his speech, but I say, let somebody talk. And then, of course, if anybody was around a decade ago for the CAR conference in 2016, when Bill Walton, NBA Hall of Famer, gave the keynote, that's a speech. It was a 40-minute speech, if you guys remember, and he didn't even start clearing his voice clearing his throat till about the 40th minute. Then it went to 50 minutes, then it went to an hour. And at some point, I think it was Charlie Vogelheim had those airport wands, that you start swinging to try and stop the airplanes. It didn't matter. I think it actually required a SWAT negotiator to get Bill Walton off the stage. So that was a speech that will never be matched. But later that evening, TPC Management, Pierre's firm, did host a wonderful party, outdoor and indoors, a local pub and diner, the Anton's Tap Room. And that was fantastic. There was a lot of great industry folk there. Again, great food. And I was able to chat with some folks ranging from Giles, Juana, and Penny there from Auction Academy. Joe Miller used to be with Auto IMS. Now he's a coach. He had some great golf stories. Colleen was chatting with our guy, Dan Kennedy, longtime GM marketer, and his son. So now I'm feeling really old. And it was a really good evening, good food, live band, the whole thing. So we really appreciate Pierre. Over the years, back before COVID, when we had a physical office, Pierre would make a visit each year and bring one of his clients or one of his folks from his organization there, give us a little update on what's happening with them and, picking our brains about what we're hearing. So again, it was great to see Pierre win an award. It was great to mix up with people at the TPC management party. In fact, I actually got to see Tom Contos. Everybody remembers Tom Contos, longtime chief economist with ADESA. He retired, but just like Michael Corleone in The Godfather 3, in this industry, just when you think you're out, they pull you back in, and he's now been hired by Auto Auction Holdings, and he'll be an industry analyst for them. So good news for Tom Contos, one of the good guys in the industry, and it's good to see him back.
Competition is fierce in the used car arena, so how can you ensure that your pre-owned inventory stands above the rest? Success starts with the quality of your leads. Auto Trader for Independents offers products that help drive high-quality leads for independent dealers like you.
So, picture this. Tommy Rogers, a guy who's been neck deep in the auction world for nearly 3 decades, finds himself in Michigan this summer, tagging along with Eddie Lafferty, the current NAAA president. They're doing the rounds, hitting up auctions coast to coast before the big NAAA World Remarketing Convention in Kansas City. And then, boom! Cox Automotive drops a bombshell. They've scooped up Bel Air and Tallahassee Auto Auctions, rebranding them as Manheim, Maryland and Manheim, Tallahassee. Rogers, who used to be part of Bel Air, is now running the show at Manheim, Maryland Specialty Sale. Talk about a plot twist. Rogers isn't some rookie, though. He's been in the game since the 90s, starting at Carolina Auto Auction in South Carolina. Funny thing, he almost went into banking until his wife spotted a job ad for a little auction company. The rest, as they say, is history. Now he's stepping into the NAAA president-elect role, ready to shake things up. U.S. auto dealers are hanging in there, even with the economy doing its usual will it or won't it dance. The latest Cox Automotive Dealer Sentiment Index says Q3 2025 wasn't all sunshine, but it wasn't a total wash either. Profits dipped, customer traffic slowed, yeah, that spring rush is long gone, but overall, dealers are cautiously optimistic. Or maybe just stubborn. Hard to tell. The numbers? A mixed bag. Market sentiment ticked up a smidge to 43, still under 50. Franchise dealers slipped a bit, independents nudged up, and EV sales? Let's just say the outlook's about as bright as a dead battery. Just outside Columbus, Ohio, there's this little auction house, Value Auto Auction in Crooksville, that's been quietly shaking things up in the digital world. 4 years ago, Chad Bailey, a former NAAA president, bought the place. Fast forward, and now it's a whole different ballgame. Dan Pletcher came on board last year to revamp their digital game. Back then, online sales were, well, non-existent. Now, they're moving 250 to 300 cars a month online. Crazy, right? From 14 accounts to 138 nationwide in under a year.
So anyways, that was just Wednesday night. Now, Thursday, we had some more events going on. For the awards luncheon, they did have Legacy in Motion. You had some of the longtime folks from the industry talking about some of their memories and how they've learned about leadership, who mentored them, who they mentored. This was really good. You had Chuck Redden from Auto Tech, Laura Taylor from America's Auto Auction in Charleston, another former NAAA president, John Poteet, Jeff Barber of State Line. Jeff Barber is the independent. And of course, Dan Kennedy, again, from GM Remarketing. And they had great stories to tell. And it was just fun to hear them talk about what has made their careers and what they've learned and what they've taught. And we got all the way through the panel before Laura Taylor uttered a minor profanity. So I count that as a W for that panel. And it was really, again, a good panel to hear from some of the legends of the auto remarketing industry. And it wasn't over with yet. They went down the following day, Wednesday. You had Market Pulse, which is the Economists. You had a great group of people from David Pendergraft from McConkey Group, Patrick Manzi, who was the chief economist of NADA, Jeremy Robb, a lead economist from Mannheim, Nikki Behrens from Carvana. And they gave a lot of great information. Again, these sessions I'm telling you about, you'll be reading about them in Used Car News, both in print and online. And they talked really about everything from imports from Canada, what's happening with EVs, how the fleet returns are going to go. Really good stuff for a short amount of time. They really packed a lot in. And again, you'll be looking at that. You'll be looking at Used Car News for more of that stuff. They had also a session on AI on the block and really focusing on that white whale of the auto auction industry, condition reports. So they had different panelists on there talking about their tools for helping to measure or look at the conditions of cars with scanners and all the super duper cameras they have. We can look at every car in like seconds. But also, they really made a point of saying it isn't going to get rid of condition report providers. There's still going to have to be a human element to do these things. But it really was informative about the modern technology and what they have and how it really makes it easier on the block and for both consignors and sellers. Later, we had an interesting presentation by a futurist. Now, I got to tell you, I'm a little skeptical about the futurist, but this was fantastic. This was a guy who did one on AI, and it was really in depth. Again, we're going to be writing about this as well. But he talked about AI and how it affects the auction industry. And he talked about the different segments of AI that helps people, AI that replaces things, and then even AI in the form of robots. They actually replace physical workers. Really spent a lot of time and a lot of in-depth stuff on that. And again, we'll be presenting that in our coverage. And then, of course, one of the big deals was they had a remarketing panel, which included Chad Bailey moderated it, and just a bunch of people from the auto auction industry to discuss different issues within the sales and remarketing. We'll talk about that later. And then lastly, the big one, the big finale was Ndamukong Suh. And for you guys who are not familiar with sports ball, Ndamukong Suh was one of the all-time great defensive linemen from Nebraska, and later was drafted by my hometown team, the Detroit Lions. Had a phenomenal career at Detroit, went on to play in a couple Super Bowls, one with LA, and he actually won one with Tampa Bay under Tom Brady. And what was great about this discussion, it was basically a conversation between Chad Bailey, who we know he's the GM of both, he's the owner of Akron Auto Auction and value auto auction in Ohio, and he's a big sports guy. What was interesting is he spent most of the time talking with Ndamukong Suh about business. A lot of things I didn't know about Mr. Suh. His degree at Nebraska was in engineering. His mother was a teacher. His dad was a builder. And through his mother's arm twisting, he finished his college degree. But even before that, the legendary Nebraska coach Tom Osborne actually introduced Ndamukong Suh, got him a meeting with really Omaha's most famous resident, Warren Buffett. And it's talking with him and some of these other people throughout the years that gave Ndamukong Suh, of course, also through his dad, a real business sense. And he went on and talked about just all the projects he's been involved in and just how he's mentored kids and also how he's learned about business through all these great individuals. Fantastic discussion. I loved how Chad did that because then it left the Q&A period at the end for folks to ask the sports questions, which was really good. I'm a big fan of Ndamukong Suh when he was in Detroit, and it was great to see him do so well. And again, it was great to see Chad do a great job interviewing a guy because when I watched Ndamukong Suh play, he even mentioned it in the interview that he's very introverted by nature. And that is absolutely true. When he was in Detroit, I don't think I heard him speak 4 words. And yet he's come out of his shell, and Chad was doing a good job of getting him to talk about all these things. So it was a great interview. Why I want to talk about Chad Bailey, it's interesting. As we know in these remarketing conventions, usually it's Charlie Vogelheim, who's the MC, just the MC of MCs. He's just outstanding. He's hilarious, does such a great job. And he kind of like shared the stage with Chad, who MC'd a couple of the panels, and Danny McNeilis, who was with Next Year Capital, that Irish brogue of Danny. And I always wanted to use the phrase Irish brogue, so I'm glad I got a chance to use it with Danny. He was fantastic as well, even wearing a glittery suit that I'm guessing he borrowed from Charlie Vogelheim at some point. And when Charlie Vogelheim wasn't on the stage a lot, I was starting to get excited because I thought maybe ABC got rid of Jimmy Kimmel and replaced him with Charlie Vogelheim. Not only would he be funnier, but Charlie Vogelheim works cheap. At least that's what I hear. But we still have Charlie Vogelheim. We still had some great MCs. It was a great event, folks. And of course, we had an exhibit hall as well. That's always a challenge. And I think it continues to be a challenge for NAAA. It was a nice exhibit hall. Used Car News had our own booth in there. But getting people, you got to get that flow in there. They want to have, people to come in there and check out the wares and meet with the vendors and everything. That's always a challenge. And I think that's always going to be a work in progress. So I just want to say people who go to these events, please visit the exhibit hall. These people are spending a lot of money there to sponsor things and also to be there to kind of show you the products they have. And you never know, they might have exactly the tool that you need as a consignor or as a seller to be successful. But anyways, we got some things coming up. The other thing that was announced here as I'm about to close out is NAAA now is partnering specifically with ARA, the former IARA, which is the Automotive Remarketing Alliance. And in the past, they used to have a car conference, which was put together by a third party. But starting next spring, it's just going to be NAAA and ARA coming together for the spring remarketing exchange. It's going to be in Addison, Texas in March. And they're very excited about it. I got to meet with NAAA President Eddie Lafferty, ARA Executive Director Mark Coleman, Paul Lips, NAAA's Executive Director, and also one of the ARA board members, our former board member, Doug Turner. And they discussed a little bit about this conference. It's going to be really good. It's really going to be something that NAAA and ARA really want people to come to. It's that meeting of consignors and buyers, meeting of consignors and auctions to make your business more successful. So keep that on your calendar. And then, of course, later this month, speaking of Pierre Pons, we have the Auction Academy, which travels throughout the country. And this month, mid-October, they'll be coming to Detroit. Colleen and I have been able to attend their events. It's fantastic. You have the education aspect where they bring in leaders of the industry to kind of teach these students something new that they may have not have heard before, but also closing event is a dinner at the Ford Rouge factory tour. And this is a special Detroit thing. It's a rite of passage. If you ever went to school in Detroit, you'd have a field trip. And at the Ford factory tour, you actually get to watch F-150 being manufactured from beginning to end. You get to watch the workers, how they put the vehicle together. It's really fun. It's great going there and watching these car guys see it for the first time. And so that's a really great event. And really shout out to Penny Wana and Giles and the gang at TPC and Auction Academy for putting together. I remember over a decade ago when Pierre introduced his idea, and it started out with an auction academy for sons and daughters of people in the industry, but now it's really expanded. They think they just finished their 8th class, graduated. Now they're having this is going to be their 9th class. And if you talk to people who've been through it, it's been a joy because they end up really not just learning a lot, but they make real connections with the other auction folks. And it's one of those things where you see this is the future of the auction industry. These people are making partnerships that are going to be the next pioneers, the next Hall of Famers. And so you just, when you see Penny or Pierre or Giles, you really give them a handshake and thank them for what they're doing for the industry. But anyways, I know that's kind of a big spew there, but I want to thank you guys for joining this month's Used Car News podcast. Next month, don't worry, we're going to bring on a guest that's going to be a lot more intelligible than I am, and we're going to get some new information for you. So please be on the lookout for, again, our Used Car News podcast for next month. And until then, this is Jeff Belant. See ya.
Thanks for listening to Used Car News Podcast. Each month, we'll bring you fast and reliable news that car dealers can rely on for this evolving industry. For a free subscription of Used Car News, please go to usedcarnews.com. This podcast is a production of BG Ad Group. Make sure to share us on social media and like and follow wherever you get your podcasts.